How's everyone doing? Did you get your coffee? It was a long line. Good, good. Okay, I think people are going to keep filtering in, but we should probably get started. Thank you all for being here. My name is Wendy Koelfgen. I'm a clean energy project manager with the Portland Clean Energy Fund. And I am super excited to be here with you today to talk about all of the different ways that PCEF may be able to bring funding to your projects. And I'm joined by my colleague, Tanya.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tanya Wolfersberger. I work for the Portland Housing Bureau, overseeing the Housing Development and Construction Services team. And I will be joining Wendy today and talking a little bit about how to PCEF funding through PHB. So more to come on that later. Welcome.
So I think for today, if you have questions, throw your hand up. We're a pretty small group, so I think let's take the questions as they come up. You don't have to save them for the end. Tanya and I are both comfortable with just having a conversation. I will tell you, this is a information-packed PowerPoint. I broke all of my PowerPoint rules. There are so many words on all of these slides, but I wanted this to be a resource for all of you afterwards, that you didn't have to remember what I said. You just have to go back and look at the slide. So that's why, and I apologize, but I think you'll thank me later. Okay, we have to do the obligatory, what is PCEF? The Portland Clean Energy Fund invests in climate action that advances racial, social, and climate justice. It was a ballot measure passed by 65% of Portland voters in November of 2018. It is the first climate fund measure created and led by communities of color in the US. It generates over $100 million annually for clean energy investments in Portland. And the way that funding is generated is as a 1% gross receipts surcharge on Portland sales by corporations with $1 billion or more in sales nationally, and 500,000 in Portland. Okay, what have we been doing since November 2018? Been doing a lot of program development and grant making. We have done 2 rounds of grant RFPs so far in 2019, from 2019 to 2022, but we have a lot more money than we thought we were going to have. At the time that the ballot measure was passed, there was an expectation that maybe the fund would generate around $50 million a year. It's generating $100 million plus. So we have about $750 million to invest right now. So we decided, instead of being a passive grant maker where we sit back and wait for nonprofits to come up with ideas, that we would develop a set of strategic programs to address areas that we know need a lot of funding and have enormous opportunities for helping to do these things here that you see. What is the Climate Investment Plan, the 5-year plan that sets funding priorities and levels, what we are funding, outcomes and goals for community responsive grants and strategic programs, and how much, figuring out the allocations between community responsive grants, which is what we've done to date, and strategic programs. City Council did a code change for us. We proposed a code change to City Council, which they approved, which allowed us to develop the Climate Investment Plan. So we're here, we're actually on time. It is still September 2023, and as we speak, City Council is meeting and making the final decision about the Climate Investment Plan. So as soon as I'm done here, I will be tuning in to see what they decide. This is the second reading of the ordinance, and ideally they just give it the thumbs up, and then we are off to the races. What happens after that is we will put out our 3rd call for community responsive grants. We're anticipating that in November, right around November 13th is the date right now, but things move, so just know that that's theoretical. And then we will start launching all of the programs, the strategic programs from the Climate Investment Plan, and That's what we're going to talk about today. What's in all of those programs, how you can get that funding, what it's going to be for. In some cases, we don't know yet. So I'm going to give you ideas of what it's going to be for, and I'm going to show you how to track as things develop. Okay, everything that we did in the Climate Investment Plan, all of the thinking was through an equity and climate framework. So what does that mean? So we asked ourselves this series of questions. Are there benefits to frontline communities? Will the program create clear, significant, and measurable benefit to frontline communities? Community leadership. Are there meaningful opportunities for community members to participate in decision-making and or provide leadership in program implementation? Does the program invest in building capacity within communities most impacted? Implementation feasibility. Can you do the project? Can the program be realistically implemented at scale with existing city staff, partners, or contractors over 5 years? So that's something that we've had to figure out, and we have slightly different approaches in each program. Climate impact, greenhouse gas reductions. At our core, we are a climate program, and we need to show greenhouse gas reductions from all of the work that we do. So will this program result in meaningful and measurable greenhouse gas reductions and sequestration? And accountability. Do accountability mechanisms exist to ensure that communities of color, low-income populations, people with disabilities, and other vulnerable communities benefit from the strategic program? Is this program additional to existing or planned efforts? So that's the lens. Here's how we divided up the funding. We have, as you see, a majority is going into renewable energy and energy efficiency for buildings. And those are not placed in order of priority. I would sooner put energy efficiency first over renewables. We can get into that later. We are making a substantial investment in transportation decarbonization. This is not something that PCEF started out doing, but we heard from the community and we heard about the need for transportation dollars. And so we are putting dollars and we are investing in that. And that's going to be EV charging infrastructure. It's a lot of different things in transportation decarbonization. Green infrastructure. Not just trees, any kind of vegetation that can be used to create shade would be included in green infrastructure. And we're definitely focusing this funding in heat islands around Portland. Capacity building. Capacity building, what we mean by that is grassroots organizations, small organizations, helping them to grow their ability to do this work. They're the ones who made this happen in the first place. Climate jobs. We need the workforce to do the work, and we want those jobs to go to PCEF priority populations. And so figuring out how we build the workforce, build new contracting firms so that they can do the work. Regenerative agriculture. This shows up in a lot of different ways. Urban farming within Portland, community gardens, first foods projects that are associated with multifamily developments. Those are all part of regenerative ag. Okay, what is the difference, Wendy, between a community responsive grant and a strategic program? It has everything to do with who leads it. So with community responsive grants, those solicitations, nonprofits will continue to be the eligible applicants for those solicitations. And they will be open to projects that are invented and designed by the nonprofits with their partners. Strategic programs are projects that we have designed with an enormous amount of community input, and we're implementing through the city via partnerships. All right, let's get into it. Here we go. This is where the coffee is really going to be important. Starting with climate jobs, workforce, and contractor development, we have within our community responsive grants, so this is the call that we're going to put out in November. We have dollars set aside, and this is what we're going to spend across 5 years. And so we're going to do multiple RFPs for community responsive grants during that 5 years. And so we won't have all of these dollars in each RFP. We'll have dollars for youth climate career exposure, job training, and contractor support initiatives. Nothing specific in there for multifamily, but I do think that multifamily development projects or retrofit projects that include a workforce development component are really interesting projects. And it gives folks the ability to get real world experience through an actual project Okay, this is the meat. 397 million in renewable energy and energy efficiency. Through community responsive grants, we will put out $92 million. The community responsive grants are where retrofit projects, for your existing buildings, if you want to do energy efficiency and renewable energy retrofits, this is where you're going to do it. This is where you're going to apply for funding. Within $50 million in that bucket. What we mean by unregulated is commonly referred to as naturally occurring affordable housing. SP3, clean energy improvements in single family homes, 140 million, probably our biggest bucket. We are including rental housing. So if you have single family housing in your portfolio, this money is for you. SP4, clean energy in small commercial buildings. We're doing a couple of different things there. We're providing appliances to small businesses, and we're also doing small commercial building upgrades. I could envision if you have a mixed use building, this might be for you. SP5, building upgrades for community severe weather response, $30 million. So these are spaces that we're looking for that would be open up to they could receive up to $60,000 in energy improvements. The amount of money we're going to scale to the level of commitment that the willing to rent stability. And that how we're defining rent stability is still being agreement from the landlord. Like I said, investments scaled based on the length of the agreement up to nine years, not 10 years, 9 years. Match does not have to come out of the pocket of the landlord. It can be from any other source, and it could be through utility, state, federal programs, as well as PCEF supported or other financing products. Some of our investment is in financing. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But this could be Energy Trust money, this could be ORMEP money, this could be IRA money, any other money, and we will actually help the landlord identify the dollars for their 25% match. Eligible things that we will do will be informed by an energy assessment that we're going to provide, and we'll target systems with high greenhouse gas and utility bill savings. We really want to create benefits for tenants. If there is one thing I could not emphasize enough, as you're engaging in these programs or applying for community responsive grants, tell us how you're creating benefits for tenants. Super important part of PCEF funding. Utility bill savings, including heat pumps, hot water heating systems, and building envelope. Those are all things that we would do as measures. Renewable energy will be considered when accompanied by a comprehensive energy efficiency scope. So if they do all the other stuff, then we would consider including renewables, but we will not do a standalone renewable project. We have not contemplated new construction in this program, and I have a question for all of you. Is there new construction, NOAAs? Mm-hmm. 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 But it's not regulated. It's not receiving any subsidy. Interesting. I don't have my glasses on, but is that you, Sarah? We have talked about home ownership. We are funding it through community responsive grants as of right now. That's where the funding is available for ownership model.
When the landlord takes advantage of these, that was President's question as well, do they need to keep the rates of rent low for moderate and low income renters?
That's the idea. We don't know exactly the details, but we want to do no harm, and we want to protect tenants. And so we don't want to go into these buildings, make substantial upgrades, and then have the tenants be evicted or have the rent raised substantially. So what we're talking about, and we're going to run a pilot for this particular program because it's such a delicate situation, work with some specific landlords to talk with them about like what is reasonable. You know, we're thinking about, can we, if we allow you to raise rent, the cost of inflation plus a couple of percent, is that reasonable? And the other thing that we've done is we've measured our investment. We've looked at what their lost rent would be over time if they don't raise rents for that period of time. And we're making an investment that's twice that amount in each unit. That's what we would be willing to do. Yes. Let's talk more. I feel like you have a lot to say about this and you might be able to help me figure some things out. Okay. Okay, single family homes.
Comment from our virtual attendees to just repeat the question or take the mic out.
Yes.
Into the audience.
Do we have a second mic? That's okay. That's a good, I do have a slide. If you'll hold that question, I will get to that because I made a really fun table to let you know, because everybody has a different definition of multifamily and we had to figure out our own. So I did make a slide for that. Okay, single family, which we also define on that slide. We want to do 1,500 deep energy retrofits in owner-occupied low-income homes. We want to do 600 limited high-impact energy upgrades for homeowners with incomes of 81 to 120% AMI, 450 for incomes of 121 to 150% AMI, and in that case, we would require a 50% match, and we also would provide low-cost financing options to make that 50% match. We'll do 50 limited high-impact energy upgrades for homes serving as care facilities or congregate housing with a 50% match requirement and low-cost financing options. 500 limited high-impact energy upgrades for single-family home renters with incomes less than 80% AMI. To reduce the risk of displacement, the allowable measures will have high energy savings value and low rental market increase value. We're still working on that one.
And this is going to be different for home ownership.
For home ownership, because they're going to come through community responsive grants, there's a lot less prescription. They can come to us and say, here's what we want to do. That's the beauty of community responsive grants. When you're in one of our strategic programs, you're following the plan that we made. Okay, small commercial. We're going to do, like I said, appliance replacements for 75 businesses with a maximum PCEF investment of $100,000 per business. The idea is that there's a lot of energy intensive equipment out there that folks use for their businesses, and we'd like to create the benefits directly for those businesses that can go with them wherever they go. So we want to help them replace those appliances. Then we will do clean energy upgrades in 65 small commercial buildings with a maximum PCEF investment of $200,000 per building. And we're looking at we're defining small commercial spaces as 40,000 square feet or less. We will prioritize investment in businesses with high energy use sectors with high energy savings opportunities like food service, food sales, small manufacturing, lodging, and laundromats. Outreach will also be designed to reach businesses providing services to vulnerable populations such as children, seniors, and people living with disabilities. We will require a 25% match for building upgrades here. Again, match can come from any other source. It does not have to come out of the pocket of the business or the building owner. It could come from the utility, state, and federal programs. And again, we will have PCEF supported financing products for that if there is no other source. But there are so many other sources. Energy assessments will determine the highest efficiency solution that will be required for both building improvements and high efficiency appliances, and that's something that we would provide. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So this is going to be the first one kind of out of the chute. We're already designing the RFP for this. We are going to bring on a program administrator. We will bring on a series of contract program administrators, all who work directly for PCEF. We're really trying to make this unique and different from other utility-led programs out there. And so that's why we want to manage the various folks at the table directly from PCEF so that we keep them aligned with PCEF goals. I can share with you afterwards, not in this slide deck, but there is an infographic that describes exactly how the single family program is going to run. I mean, we're making a big investment in administration, totally to your point, because it's a lot of homes. Yes, so I share your concern. And so one of the things that we built into the Climate Investment Plan is the ability to shift funds between programs so that we don't leave dollars on the table. So if there is a program that's going really well, like the one that I'm doing with Tanya right now, where it's, the funding is really easy to get out, but we don't want to step away from things because they're hard either. And so we want to create accountability for ourselves, that we tried to figure out every possible way that we could get at these sectors. These allocations are made because of the need in these sectors. Yeah. Some of these funds going to be used under the Portland Housing down payment assistance.
I don't know. We have not contemplated that yet. I think that's someone else's program within my bureau.
Okay. Did that one. Going back to SB4. Yeah.
Will that be for commercial landlords as well as commercial tenants?
It will be. With a commercial landlord, we want to see a long-term lease with a qualifying business, so a business that's owned by a member of a PCEF priority population. Okay. Yes, I suppose they could. I mean, you can't do anything on a building without the owner of the building being a part of it. So if someone has an idea of how to do that, let me know. Okay, SP5, building upgrades for community severe weather response, $30 million. We envision that this would be government and nonprofit building upgrades, so those would be the eligible applicants for this funding. 200,000 of this funding will be dedicated to technical assistance for applicants, so we'll help folks figure out what to do. Technical assistance will primarily consist of feasibility studies that will inform building selection and improvements. Up to 50% of the construction budget can be used for eligible non-energy life, health, safety, and accessibility upgrades, so wheelchair ramps, seismic stability and improvements. A small portion of funds will be allocated for climate resilient related planning and coordination expenses. There's an open question right now about whether or not we could use some of this funding. Let's say you have a multifamily affordable development and you have common living space in that you could open up during a climate emergency. Could we plug some of this funding into that space while you're using some of the funding from another, one of our other strategic initiatives in unit? So that's something that I just put that question out there this week, and there was like, hey, we should talk about that. So more to come on that. Okay, so a redevelopment project where they're altering the use. What was the original use and what's the new use? Original use was rental only. They're shifting the use to rental plus ownership that would have community space, and could the severe weather shelter funding be applied to that community space? If it, maybe, yeah. There's nothing in that rules it out from what I can see right now. It's just a matter of if we're making dual investments in the same buildings. I don't know the answer to that yet. This was the promised table. Yes. That is the question of on the table that I don't know the answer to, but I posed that question this week, and it was yeah, we should talk about that. So that's what I know so far. Okay, so to the earlier question of how are we defining multifamily? So with the SP1, regulated multifamily affordable housing, we are serving 20 plus units through that program. With SP2, the unregulated multifamily housing, we would serve anything that's 2 units or more. With single family program, we would serve we would serve 2 to 4 units if there is a unit owner occupying one of the spaces. And then if you go all the way over to community responsive grants, you see that we will serve projects, single family projects where there's less than 50 units per grant, multifamily, retrofit only, or new construction up to 20 units. So because we're not serving those 20 units and less through SP1, we'll serve them through community responsive grants. I know it's a little confusing. We are funding that right now, and it's through a community responsive grant. You still have to be a nonprofit to apply for that funding. I think that that's community responsive grants. And the thing that I'll say about community responsive grants is previously, everything that you see on this table was coming through community responsive grants. Now, everything that you see in SP1 to SP16 has its own strategic initiative. So I feel like the community responsive grant pool is narrowed. There's going to be more opportunity there for projects that don't fall into one of the strategic initiatives. You get a copy of my lovely slides. That's why I made them the way that I made them. Okay. I will point out one thing we didn't talk about was, because it's not super relevant, but we do have SP16 is climate-friendly public schools. We're making an allocation to each school district in Portland. They're going to come up with proposals of how they want to distribute that funding, and it's for schools. They are yet to be identified. So for like SP3 will be the first one that comes out, and we will do an RFP, a call for program administrators to come and apply to us and propose how they would run that program. With the unregulated multifamily housing, we're gonna run a pilot. And so we wanna do that before we do an RFP for a program administrator. PHB is the program administrator for SP1. The commercial buildings, we may have another city bureau be a program administrator. We don't know yet. The rest are, and public schools are going to be their own program administrators. We're going to make allocations directly to them. Okay, other stuff. Transportation decarbonization. This is like EV infrastructure. $35.5 million from community responsive grants. 30% of these dollars are set aside for right-of-way access. So if you're putting in a new multifamily housing development and you have a need to create some EV like bike paths, this is something that we would like to fund. We'd like to see good access for alternative transportation. Comprehensive e-bike access and support. This is for training new bike mechanics. There's nothing specific in this for multifamily. Equitable clean transportation access. This is the, it's an existing PBOT program whose name is escaping me right now. It's a transportation wallet. Are folks familiar with transportation wallet? It's something that's available to low-income folks, a way for them to ride public transportation and get funding for that. We're going to put more funding into that existing program. Affordable housing providers are definitely the outreach conduit for getting these benefits into the hands of your tenants. Oh. Here's all the stuff I just said. A couple more things under the community responsive grants. You can buy down the cost of EVs. So if you have vehicles that you use for administrative use for your nonprofit, we could help fund replacing those with electric vehicles. And then e-infrastructure, and that's everything that you might need in order to enable electric bikes. Even like creating a secure place for people to keep bikes at your structure would be something we would consider funding. We talked about the 30% for right-of-way. I think that's it for this one. Sarah. Within the strategic initiatives, that's true. Not necessarily through community responsive grants. In community responsive grants, we're more likely to pay 100% of measures instead of the whatever is above code measure. Okay, green infrastructure through community responsive grants, we're going to have $5 million We will have a green infrastructure maintenance reserve of $5 million because just planting the trees isn't good enough. You got to make sure that they stay. And then we have a strategic initiative called the Equitable Tree Canopy Initiative, which is $40 million. So let's talk about these a little bit. For community responsive grants, that $5 million, it's really focused on water retention and diversion from the stormwater system. So how can you collect water and use it to irrigate locally instead of having it flow into the stormwater system? The grants will have a $1 million cap. Remember, this is a total of $5 million over 5 years, so it's not a huge fund. Landscape designers and architects can help design these elements, so they're good folks to talk to if you want to incorporate something like this into one of your projects. With Equitable Tree Canopy, this is something that's being run in collaboration with Portland Parks and Rec. They're prioritizing planting in heat islands. They're working on outreach and onboarding right now. There's definitely going to be private property opportunities, but this is all in the process right now. So that's what I know. Okay. Regenerative agriculture, $14 million through community responsive grants, and then $6 million through increasing urban farming opportunities, planning, and land acquisition. I don't know if I have, we do, okay. So $14 million will be split between 2 RFPs over the next 5 years. It'll be a $2 million cap. Example projects we have, like the Nea to Stillwell Village project. These are 2 projects that we have going on right now. Rainwater capture in a 5,000 gallon cistern, native trees and shrubs, and raised garden beds. That's something that we funded also combined with a comprehensive energy efficiency package. For Cascadia Behavioral Health, we did residential climate resilience gardens program, including workforce skills development for residents, all of whom are unemployed. So they're taking care of the gardens. Okay, mini grants and capacity building program. Did I do a slide? I did a slide. Okay. Mini grants are really important to know about because they are funding that anybody can apply for. And I think that one of the most important things that you can get from a mini grant is you can contract with a grant writer to help your organization apply for PCEF. So we will help you apply for more money. Some examples, they're $5,000 grants. The next time that we will have an application will not be until January 2024, so there won't be an opportunity before this next RFP, but you can use it to help you prepare for the next RFP. Here are some other examples. Buy plants, soil, and compost for a community garden project. Pay for a contractor to conduct an energy audit of one of your buildings. Send staff to a training to learn more about clean energy. Pay for staff to organize a climate-related outreach event. These are all the types of things that we have funded with these grants. We try to run these on a quarterly basis. We're taking a little break while they do a little restructuring on the program right now. So starting in January 2024, you should see them come out quarterly. Okay, this is kind of a big pile of everything else that we call multiple funding categories, other carbon emissions reducing projects. So other greenhouse gas reduction sequestration, this is $2 million for anything we haven't thought of. If you have an idea that we haven't thought of, we used to call this our innovation bucket. Apply for it. Let's see if we can figure out how to fund it. SP11 and SP12, very specific funding for 82nd Avenue, street tree expansion and resilient business infrastructure, nothing specific in there for multifamily. Targeted electric vehicle financing tools, let's talk about that one a little bit. It's aimed at transportation decarbonization for transportation heavy businesses. Again, nothing specific for multifamily. Access to fair and flexible capital. So this will be consumer loans for single family and commercial properties. We're helping to make products more accessible, could be used to cover match requirements. So if there's no other funding source, this is the funding and we're not putting up the capital for the loans. We're working with lenders to buy down interest rates. So ideally, they're going to be very, very low interest loans. And then SP15, that final category, it's for us to be able to put funding into city-led projects that need match in order to qualify for federal funding. So we're using PCEF dollars to attract additional federal dollars to climate action. I do want to talk a little bit about the Cooling Portland program. So what this is it's the installation of efficient portable heat pump and cooling equipment. It's for folks who are 60% AMI or below. We give a priority for over 60 years of age with medical conditions that increase with heat and living alone. The units are provided and installed through community distribution partners. Housing providers can be a CDP or can work with one to obtain cooling units for their residents. There's a great URL there that will take you to where you can find out about getting these units. They're portable units that go directly to the tenants. You as a housing provider, if you have an existing building that has no AC, you can advocate for your tenants to get these. And that's our little counter so far. Our goal is 7,000 units by the end of the year, and we're almost there. This is the only way to get standalone AC through PCEF. Okay, that's me. And now it's Tanya.
Just want to pause if there's any questions about what Wendy just presented in the room and for our virtual attendees as well. Brendan.
Is it anticipated that like other maybe city corridors would take that place in the future, like maybe 122nd has been like recently prioritized, or other like neighborhood districts where that shift, I guess.
So the question is if there's going to be other tree canopy focused corridors beyond 82nd Avenue that will become funded.
I think that's a super interesting idea, and I would say after this climate investment plan, we will start writing another climate investment plan, and we will be looking for, what are the next places that we need to go. So please suggest that.
Clarification on what PCEF will pay for the new multifamily development. Because I heard you say under.
Hold that thought, Jeremy. Okay, now a question behind you. The question is about requirements for workforce.
One thing that I didn't include here is that we are making workforce investments in all of the strategic initiatives, in addition to there being workforce dollars still in community responsive grants. It's not there are workforce requirements. There's workforce equity requirements where we want to see you making and attempting to achieve equitable workforce utilization. But in terms of like having workforce training as a part of your project, it's not required. Right. So right. The question is, if I'm a single family homeowner and I am going to participate in a program and get PCEF dollars, the contractor that I work with, how's that gonna be determined? And actually, we're gonna create the contracting pools through the strategic initiatives. The only place that we won't have, necessary say on that is if you are participating with a nonprofit that's come through a community responsive grant, in which case those entities have signed a workforce and contractor equity agreement with us that says that they're going to pursue trying to use those types of contractors. So either way, but it's so far we don't really have any community responsive grants, and certainly not any of our strategic initiatives are planned where homeowners have to go out and find their own contractors. We are, although with the unregulated multifamily housing, we have heard that landlords may have partnerships with contractors that they may want to work with. And so that's something that we want to look at and talk about with landlords and see how we can integrate their existing relationships.
Yes.
So I love your slide, so very, very thorough. One thing I missed, and I don't know if it was spoke about, how would a single-family homeowner apply for these funds?
How does a single family homeowner apply for these funds? there will be an application. Once a program administrator is hired, their primary job is going to be marketing, outreach, lead development. And so they will develop an application process that will, I'm very certain that there will be a lot of attention given in that process to making it easy and equitable and accessible. It's gonna take a little bit more time than that because we got to put out an RFP to select an administrator first. So I would say best case scenario, we might start taking applications by fall 2024.
Those be like solar trade ally driven applications or HVAC trade driven applications, or would it be homeowner?
Solar trade ally or HVAC trade ally driven applications or homeowner applications. The contractors would come and apply on the behalf of the homeowners. Is that what you're asking?
That's kind of what I'm curious about, because I think sometimes for multifamily, a lot of times our solar trade bidders that they apply that grant.
Right, so that's kind of the utility model. I don't know yet. I don't anticipate that contractors would be doing this on their own. They might generate leads, they might bring folks into the program, but then we'll, help them along the way. That's the vision. The vision is not that the contractors are the admin. City of Portland, so the jurisdictional boundary of Portland. Good question.
We'll have to advocate for expansion on that. So I want to just jump in, Jeremy. I know you've got questions about the regulated multi-affordable housing. That's where we're going back to the beginning of the strategic programs, number one. This represents our partnership between the Portland Housing Bureau and Portland Clean Energy Fund that we have been kind of piloting over the last few months. We're really focused on supporting the goals of prioritizing low-income and other frontline communities that live in regulated affordable housing, multifamily housing, trying to raise the bar on the efficiency and renewable energy upgrades in those new affordable multifamily housing projects. This strategic program has up to $60 million in PCEF funds over the next 5 years that we're working together to get out to projects. And it's going to be dispersed as grants. So this is a grant program through Portland Housing Bureau to nonprofit and for-profit developers. This kind of highlights nonprofit, but that's just because it's a grant program. It's not exclusive to nonprofits. That's your all decision on how you want to apply for that grant and who is the grantee. And we're kind of phasing this, rolling this out in a phase where we've started with a pilot and we're slowly kind of incorporating this into a full program over the next 5 years and hopefully beyond. So the eligible projects that will be served through this program are kind of what are listed on this slide. So it's mainly new construction and rehab multifamily affordable housing projects that are at least 20 units or more. They're projects that have been funded directly through Portland Housing Bureau or through Oregon Housing and Community Services. They have an award for capital costs through a competitive solicitation process or a reservation of private activity bonds. The units will be restricted at 60% area median income or below for a minimum period of at least 30 years, regulating that affordability. So there's many eligible uses that projects can apply for PCEF funds through PHB, including a lot of the, starting with hard construction costs, and there's also some soft costs that are supported through PCEF dollars. With the hard costs that are listed of these eligible use measures on this slide, really looking for projects to submit kind of the baseline or the delta in the cost differential between kind of a baseline cost or a lower efficiency measure and a higher efficiency measure. So if you think about baseline in terms of what would your project scope be if you were building that as in a lower efficiency under these measures. We'll be producing some guidelines to help projects figure out what the definition of those baseline energy models are for these measures. So more to come on that, and more guidelines that we'll be posting on both of our websites to help these projects through the process. So other hard construction costs that will be supported by PCEF funding is, and supported through the full costs are the solar generation and storage, electric vehicle charging stations. Again, kind of someone brought up the question about whether it's above code or not. This is a program that is funding measures that are above code, and then tree planting above code plus 5 years of establishment care to make sure that those trees survive and grow. So it's also important to highlight that the PCEF funding for this is, there's kind of like the no double dipping rule in these funds. So it's the portion of funding that isn't supported by another funding source would be covered through PCEF funds. Soft costs covered through PCEF funding is the cost of energy modeling associated with the energy savings from the funded measures. So looking for energy modeling as part of the proposal, and then at the end to verify that those measures were met. Clean energy feasibility studies, if they're not funded by other sources, or the portion that's not funded by another source. And then staff training for tenants and building operations staff on PCEF measures that kind of takes place within that first year of occupancy. So everyone who's managing and operating the buildings and residing in the buildings understands how to utilize some of those, you know, if it's a heat pump or something like that, they understand what those measures are doing. Salud. So we have been slowly rolling out this project, this partnership together, and we're really excited that we've been working with some existing projects in PHB's pipeline that have been in their pre-development and construction phases, and we're really looking forward to bringing more projects into this program. We're currently working with some projects that are already in the pre-development stages to bring PCEF dollars into their projects, and we also are excited to be accepting proposals through our funding solicitations, like the last gap solicitation that just closed. So how do you apply for PCEF funding through Portland Housing Bureau? So as I just mentioned, we have our normal kind of notice of funding availability solicitation processes, like our last gap that just went out. And we will be opening up a kind of direct application process as well in the coming months. And we'll have lots of guidelines and information about that process. But generally, there's similar process steps that will occur once an application is submitted. Projects that are coming through PHB solicitation process are going to follow a similar timeline as other projects that come through PHB, through that same timeline of pre-development through financial closing. That seems to be about 12 to 18 months for most projects. Obviously, every project is different. That is true for projects that are going to come in through a direct application. It's really going to depend on the complexity and the type of your project and where in the development timeline that project is sitting when they submit for PCEF funds. So, but all the process steps remain relatively similar. Once the application is submitted, we'll be evaluating that application, evaluating the eligible use measures that are proposed, working with projects to understand what the eligible use measures are and if they fit within the criteria and the requirements of the PCEF program. Then we will work with projects to submit a concept endorsement to PCEF, which is generally to give projects an idea of like, okay, here are the eligible use measures that will be supported, and kind of a general framework of the funding amount based on the cost estimates that the project knows at the time. Further down the line, once cost estimates are more finalized, perhaps when you're at contract, finalizing your GMP contracts and have a final cost estimate for the eligible use measures that will be supported through PCEF, then we'll issue a final approval letter for you to move forward. That will go into a next step of drafting a grant agreement between PHB and the developer. And then after the grant agreement is signed, then we'll disperse funds as PHB does now through a kind of monthly disbursement process. So that's a very high-level summary of the process, but it gives you a kind of a sense of what the steps are involved. Yes? You get the money as you spend the money. It's as when I reference PHB's normal disbursement processes, we're asking for copies of invoices to be submitted. We pay off of those invoices monthly, yeah. Sorry, Danelle, say that again. Will the direct application process be a rolling? It'll be regular. I'm not sure if it'll be rolling yet. Did you have a similar question? Okay. Monthly disbursements, yes. So, any other questions? Did I get to everything, Jeremy?
Yes, but in the community responsive grants, I heard you say that items that are energy efficiency related, they're income or eligible in the community responsive group, and that multifamily things that are helping beyond.
So the way that it works in the regulated multifamily program is we have established a baseline for each measure that is the code requirement. So let's say for heating, you'll be very glad to know that the baseline is cadet heaters, which cost almost nothing. So we subtract the cost of the cadet heaters you would put in the space from the cost of the mini split, and we give you the delta. In the strategic initiative, in community responsive grants, again, where we're going to be serving retrofits, I mean, it's not like you can't take your new construction project and put it through community responsive grants so that you can get more funding. Like, we're serving very specific housing stock through. If we're serving you through a strategic initiative, then you're not going to get served through community responsive grants.
So the second part of that question is, home ownership doesn't have its own strategic initiative.
It does not.
It has to go through community responsive grants.
Correct.
So under community responsive grants, we would be eligible to apply for all of the
Yes, and this is something that we are working on as well, is that we have funded in the past for the Proud Ground projects like a net zero route. Previously, we funded up to 30% of total construction costs. We probably are not going to fund at quite that level going forward, but we are going to offer a net zero path that doesn't require you to pay for specific measures. And we'll know more about that in November. Okay, I'm going to take this question from the chat. If we apply for SP1 through PHB, can we also apply for SP9 for a community garden for the new development? Yes, I think that you can. I don't know exactly how the SP9 dollars are going to come out yet. And again, people have asked a lot of questions about stacking programs. That is something I will learn more about, and we will figure out more about, and we will get back to you. Maybe I'll try to put something in the slide so that when you all get, I'm trying to figure out how I get back to you specifically about that. Trying to access multiple strategic programs. Through one or another program, yes. You may not be able to do it all in like one shot, but yes, yeah. I know, trust me, I know, I'm exhausted already. Mm-hmm. We have a baseline, which is almost 100% ready, camera ready. We've developed it with energy modelers. to determine what is the code baseline in this building. And so we will provide that to anybody who wants to fill out an application so that you don't have to guess what the baseline is that you should be comparing to what you would be installing. Yeah, you're welcome. Other questions?
This is not a question I asked, is that if you want to apply to a new construction with just new stuff, and it's way above the code on the energy efficiency,
Like money you've already spent?
yeah. But we're still in the construction, we haven't converted yet.
You're still in construction.
We are kind of converting stuff, so technically we're still under, we have not quite stabilized the project.
And it's a current PHB or OHCS funded project, and you potentially have some gap in your funding because of the construction interest rates that you would like to try to fill. For currently, let's talk about that afterwards. I don't want to make a sweeping like, yes, you can, no, you can't. Yeah. Any other questions? How are we doing on time? Oh, we're really good. Okay. This was great, y'all. We'll be here. If you want to come up and chat with us, feel free. But thanks so much for being here. Thanks for bringing such fabulous questions. Oh, Jeremy's got one more. For the good of the order, Jeremy, bring us home. So yes, and if code changes, then we will change the baseline. So it'll be a living document.
And as code changes, it gets more restrictive than the other forms of movement.
I think so. I think that's a safe assumption. So Jeremy's question was, as code changes and becomes more restrictive, does that mean that your funding will shrink? And I think that might be true, but I don't know yet. We haven't contemplated that. Mathematically, that makes sense. How do they get access to the slides and presentation? Oh, Tanya knows.
I believe that Housing Oregon will send out links to all the slides, and all the presentations will be available on a YouTube channel. That is, I believe there's information in your program about that.
And also, there's a good website to go to. We have a mailing list, PCEF does, and we email out pretty regularly about what's going on in the program. And then also, if you can read that, and feel free to come up, and I also have cards. Contact me directly. I'm the multifamily person for PCEF, so I'm the person that you want to talk to.
And I'm the PHB person.
And she's the PHB person. So we're the people you want to talk to. We're the people you're talking to. Thanks, everyone.